We're EarthForce. We are a national nonprofit and the home of Environmental Action Civics. In field chats, you'll hear research-based, actionable tips and inspiring stories of youth-adult partnerships that empower young people to become environmental decision makers. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to Field Chats, Environmental Action Civics Essentials, brought to you by EarthForce. So today we're talking about ways to build youth-adult partnerships. My name is Sarah Jennings. I'm one of the program managers at EarthForce, and I'm here with some of our lovely team members, Taylor, what's up, and Alyssa.
Hey, everybody.
And of course, we have Haley on the production side in the background. So thanks, Haley. Youth-adult partnerships are a huge component of environmental action civics. In simple terms, it means youth and adults sharing power. This can take so many different forms, but there are some optimal ways to start, and we'll share 3 of them today. These are based on research and years of application from Environmental Action Civics practitioners. So tip 1, invite them.
Invite them. Yeah. It seems so simple, but I remember when this was presented to us at the North American Association for Environmental Education, longest phrase ever, the conference a couple years ago, and the speaker that we had at our workshop was like, you first have to invite young people to the table. And, you know, in classrooms, sometimes they're already at the table, but there are so many spaces where youth-adult partnerships, people want to have youth-adult partnerships, want to include more youth voice, etc., and really invite them to the table is the first step. And then really making sure that we're not just outreaching to them, that we're providing opportunities that young people have genuine agency, and we'll get more into that here in a little bit, but really we're inviting them, but we want real engagement versus outreach. And we also want to be clear about why we want them at the table. I think it's funny sometimes young people are like, but why are you inviting me to this? And you're like, no, because I genuinely care about what you have to say. And I think you probably have some really great ideas. And just making sure that they're clear with that. Also, in this invite them space, just recognizing that as adults, we do hold a certain amount of power. And so utilizing that power to really be in allyship with young people, and helping them, helping other adults to prepare to speak with young people too. Those are all spaces in this kind of preparing and inviting and getting started space that I think it's really important to use our power as adults. And additionally, and we might touch on this a little bit in tip 3, but stakeholder mapping and who you engage with in EarthForce's environmental action civics processes. It's all about asking for change in our communities around issues that are concerning to young people. And so recognizing our space as adults with the power to facilitate some of those connections and connections and outreach and such to the other adults, I think is really great. So just inviting them to the table, making sure it's genuine, and using our power as adults well. So that's kind of all falls into this tip 1 of how it starts. Taylor, do you want to go over the tip 2?
Because I think tip 2 and tip 1 have that connection of genuine elements. So number 2 is just being authentic. And so when you engage young folks to start, there's an element of authenticity there, but then carrying that out through the process so that builds empowerment and collaboration and co-creation, especially when you really want to learn alongside those young folks, kind of showing them that you don't have all the answers as the practitioner, because you kind of have this shared goal. So it's kind of, you preface this, our community has a need, our community is facing some form of an environmental issue, and I would like you to help me together to create some form of change. And so pursuing that change and that action doesn't always have a straight line. So it's kind of all right, you together we are going to do this, and letting them know that you don't have all the answers is also key, and that you're going to be learning together or looking for those answers together. Because I feel oftentimes adults design programming or lessons or things that lack that youth input. So it's oh, we're going to be doing this activity. Then students show up, they do the activity, but then where's the how or the why? And I think that kind of can foster apathy. So I think with the authenticity of youth adult partnerships and the environmental action civics process, this can help combat that apathy when you kind of have that authenticity, build that relationship, and pursue a goal or a strategy for holistic community change that the students lead can really provide that empowerment and building those skills that we always talk about. And then that activity or the solution or whatever it is you seek to change really has a representative topic, that it represents the needs of those young folks, their interests and the needs of that community and so on. So it has this larger connection. And so that's what I would say, authenticity. And not Alyssa, SJ, you kind of talked about this non-example, and I don't know if I could do it justice, but can you help me kind of explain?
Yeah, sometimes, and this is like the educator, I think, in me, like when we're learning new things, it's helpful to have a non-example. So I think like in order to understand authenticity, I think we need to understand maybe what like tokenizing or deception, manipulation, or like decoration could look like. And these are terms that are referring to with Hart's Ladder, which we'll put that resource in our show notes. And so oftentimes, like most of the adults we work with are well-meaning and want to be in partnership with youth and want to learn about what that looks like. And a lot of them haven't done that like inner work to figure out like, where am I maybe? And in terms of like, thinking about how much power do I share? So I'll just share this example. And this is an example of I guess like, inauthentic engagement with young people. So, an example is that adults are selecting some really charming, articulate youth that are good at public speaking to perhaps talk about a community garden that young people have or that the organization wants to have. But those young people haven't had any opportunity to critically reflect or consult with their peers or be part of the decision-making around that garden. So they are more of, this symbol of youth adult partnerships than the authentic, right? That's the word here, the authentic engagement and involvement with youth adult partners. So I see that happening. And it's no one's fault, but I think really reflecting on youth adult partnerships before you start is important.
Yeah, and then identifying too that you can have well intentions behind it too. Like I think that's the challenging bit about youth adult partnerships. It's because you feel like, I'm engaging, but it might be missing the mark in the sense of like agency that you give those young folks, and then the true sharing and decision making along that. So that's why I was trying to set you up for this step, the tip 3, which is kind of this next part of like putting your money where your mouth is, as it were, and genuinely sharing.
Right, because I think like in terms of being authentic, it's not a one-off opportunity. Like today, we're going to engage in youth adult partnerships, providing multiple opportunities to share power and decision making, and regularly asking youth for opinions and feedback as part of in this example with teachers, and part of the school ethos and part of your classroom culture, and then bridging that into the outer community as well. So how could you offer youth multiple opportunities to, like to your point, Alyssa, not just outreach, but really engage with other adults in, whether those are experts or even better, right, if those are allies, and thinking about who those allies are. So multiple opportunities. And I think this is all really appropriate for this age group, and young people will want to like naturally have these continued opportunities. They are looking for this. They are wanting this from like a teenage developmental standpoint. They want to seek out their own solutions rather than accepting solutions from adults. This is developmentally where they're at, and so if a project is meaningless and they don't have a lot of voice and agency, they're going to lose interest. Every person who's worked with students has gone through this, and they're like, kids don't care about this anymore. There's apathy. And so they need to feel like they're part of something important. So giving young people this continual opportunity to share power as the facilitator of environmental action civics, but then also like priming other adults up to engage in those shared power conversations with other adults in an authentic way. Back to that other tip. So moving from traditional youth-adult partnership roles to youth being the project leader and adults offering input and advice and thinking of ways to genuinely and authentically engage with teenagers. You guys want to bring it home?
Yeah, I was thinking, what are some resources that we have and some examples and such. And so the first thing that I was thinking about, or that we had come up with together, was setting the stage for this, like being clear from the beginning with young people about how this looks and that you actually like care about their opinion and want to hear from it, and setting up a respect agreement about like, here's kind of what I commit to as the adult in the room, and here's what young people commit to, and just sort of setting that stage. That's something that I think, talk about a lot. And then we have a couple of youth adult partnership activities that are really basic, but it's really just about getting comfortable with facilitating spaces for young people to talk to each other, to share opinions, to participate in planning. So they're really like kind of foundational and such. And then Taylor, do you want to talk about some of the other pieces?
The ones about collectively making important decisions.
Yeah.
Co-creating rubrics. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So kind of, putting that like money where your mouth is, like actually taking that engagement and making it real. So students say, all right, we've collected this information. We understand that this is the effective change we want, and then running with that. So like they and you create that decision and then have the power to make it happen. So not just saying, oh, great input, I like that, and then leaving it there. Saying, no, you have this strategy, executing that strategy and taking those ideas they have into action with that allyship is that like the end of the process. So all the things we were talking about earlier is tips along the way, like how can I do this as it's done? But once you've created that idea and that strategy, showing them that you can do it is what you need to do. And be like, yep, I trust, I believe, we did this, let's go ahead. And so, and then involving them in that co-creating of the rubrics is kind of like, how do we know when we have succeeded? Because oftentimes an idea might not succeed. So even though they did all of that amazing work throughout the process, they created that strategy. Maybe it's a simple ask for change that like, oh, the person in power, this is what we want to see different in our community. And then they say, no, we can't do that. That's out of our budget, or for whatever reasons. And making sure you go to those students and show them that it wasn't failure. It just wasn't a success in that sense. So you still did all this amazing work and you're striving for something, and identifying where those successes are. And then it also kind of relates to the respect agreements about expectations for those students. Like, oh, I expect you to do this along the way, and you can expect me to do that along the way. And so I think those are kind of the end of process things that really make it like a whole piece that you got to do. You got to at least strive for it, so that all that work feels like it came to fruition in some form. And so that's kind of like the full circle. Did I touch on that? I kind of just went off.
I think that was good. Yeah. Do you have anything to add, SJ?
I was just thinking about what you were saying too, when they do get that no, and I think one of the things is, and I made a note of this, but I didn't get to touch on, is like laying all the cards out on the table. Like there's so much that is uncertain when working in youth adult partnerships with students leading the way, and just like laying that out there. Like we don't know, when engaging with adults in partnerships, we don't know what the response is going to be. And so like owning that, like in partnership with the young people as you're facilitating, is modeling that, right? Like we're in this together. And so even if they're like getting that no, it's like they've built that trust in adults, and it's like we just need to find the right ally. So you can build that confidence in a youth adult partnerships, even when it might seem like it's going to get knocked down from an adult that says no, with other allies. So that's something I wanted to touch on.
Yeah. And just quickly before we close out, the other example I love is just letting young people know that you don't have all the answers and that you are learning alongside. So actually saying, I don't know, when somebody asks something that you don't know. I was just talking to a teacher friend of mine, and she was like, they always think I'm lying because they always think like adults have to know everything. It's like, no, I actually don't know. Let's decide together, or like learn together. And I think there's a lot of power and partnership in that. So
Great.
yeah, thanks so much for joining us and tuning in today, everybody. As always, let us know what you think over at earthforce.org/podcast. And don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
And 5, 4, 3, 2,